This was the most shocking school racist rule, and one student finally broke it. Every school has its secrets. Some are silly, like who actually stole the mascot's costume last year, or which teacher sneaks donuts into the teacher's lounge. But others are darker, things so ingrained, so unspoken, that they shape the way kids grow up without anyone ever writing them down. At Lincoln Middle School, that secret was the bus rule. It wasn't posted on a sign. It wasn't written in the student handbook. No teacher or principal ever announced it, but everyone knew it from the very first day they stepped onto that faded yellow school bus. The rule was simple. Where you sat depended on who you were. The back rows, the cool rows, were claimed by the white kids from the nicer part of town. They sprawled across the cracked seats, blasting music from their phones, laughing too loud, tossing chips at each other. Those seats were theirs, always. The middle rows? That was where the in-betweeners sat. Kids who didn't want trouble. Kids who just wanted to disappear into their backpacks. Kids who learned quickly that blending in meant survival. And the front rows, closest to the driver, belonged to the black and brown kids. Not because anyone said they had to sit there, but because they knew if they didn't, things would get ugly. Nobody had to explain it. It was tradition. A silent, poisonous tradition. If a new kid ever tried to sit in the wrong row, they'd figure it out fast. Sometimes it was the sharp, cutting laughter from behind them. Sometimes it was the hard stares reflected in the bus window. And sometimes it was the driver himself, clearing his throat, tilting his head, and saying in a tone that wasn't really a suggestion, "Why don't you move up front?" Every kid learned the rule. Every kid obeyed it. Malik had learned it too. He was 12 when he first noticed it, his second week of 7th grade. He remembered standing at the bottom of the bus steps, his backpack heavy on his shoulders, his sneakers squeaking against the metal floor. His cousin Devin had leaned down from one of the front seats, patting the spot next to him. "Sit here," Devin had whispered. "Why? There's space back there," Malik had said, pointing toward the middle rows. Devin's eyes darted nervously to the back. Then he shook his head. "Just trust me. Sit here." And so Malik did. From that day on, he sat near the front, his view of the road blocked by the driver's broad shoulders, his ears filled with the sound of the engine growling louder than the laughter behind him. At first, he thought maybe it was just coincidence. Maybe the front rows were simply more convenient. But as the weeks turned into months, he realized the pattern was too perfect to ignore. Black kids in the front, white kids in the back, everyone else scattered carefully in between. It was segregation without the signs, separation without the law, and no one, no teacher, no parent, no adult, ever said a word about it. Sometimes, Malik wondered if he was the only one who saw it. But then he'd glance at the other kids in the front rows, their slouched shoulders, their lowered eyes, their earbuds jammed in deep, and he knew they saw it too. They just chose silence. Silence was safer. That was the thing about the bus rule. It didn't need enforcement. Fear enforced it. Fear of standing out. Fear of being mocked. Fear of being told you didn't belong. So day after day, Malik climbed those steps, nodded at the driver, and slid into the same worn-out seat near the front. Day after day, he listened to the laughter that wasn't for him, the inside jokes that weren't his, the music that wasn't his choice. Day after day, he obeyed the rule nobody talked about, but deep down, something in him twisted. Because Malik wasn't the kind of kid who liked rules, especially ones that made no sense. He was the kid who asked why too many times in class, the kid who argued with referees at basketball practice, the kid who hated being told where he could and couldn't be. And the bus rule? The bus rule gnawed at him. It gnawed at him on cold mornings when the front seats felt lonelier than ever. It gnawed at him on sunny afternoons when the kids in the back seemed free, while he sat staring at the back of the driver's head. It gnawed at him every time he remembered his grandmother's stories. Stories about marches, about protests, about sitting where you weren't supposed to sit. "Don't let anybody tell you where you belong," she used to say, her voice sharp as steel. "You belong anywhere your feet can carry you." Malik carried those words like a spark inside him. And one morning, as he climbed the bus steps, that spark was about to catch fire. It started like any other morning. The sky was still a soft gray, the sun not fully awake yet. The bus rumbled down the street, stopping every few blocks to swallow up another group of kids. The same screech of the brakes, the same hiss of the doors, the same smell of vinyl and old gum stuck under the seats. Malik climbed up the steps just like he always did, one hand on the railing, backpack hanging off his shoulder, hoodie pulled tight against the morning chill. He nodded at the driver out of habit. The driver barely nodded back, eyes fixed on the road. Normally, this was the moment Malik would slide into the first empty seat he found in the front rows. He'd drop his bag beside him, press his forehead to the cold glass, and try to tune out the noise coming from the back. But that morning felt different. Maybe it was the way his grandmother's words echoed in his head. "You belong anywhere your feet can carry you." Maybe it was the way his cousin Devin had been transferred to another bus, leaving him without his usual front row partner. Or maybe it was just that spark inside him that had been burning hotter every day. Whatever it was, Malik decided he wasn't going to stop walking. 1 step, 2 steps, past the first row. Nobody blinked. 3 steps, 4 steps, past the second row. A few kids looked up, puzzled. 5 steps, 6 steps, past the third row. Now the whispers started. A couple of heads turned. Malik's heart was hammering in his chest, but his face stayed calm. He kept walking. The back rows were close now, the place no one like him ever sat. He could feel the stairs drilling into his back, some wide-eyed, some sharp and cutting. He slowed for half a second, just half. A voice in his head screamed, "Sit down now. Don't push it. Don't make this a thing." But another voice, louder this time, pushed back. "Why not? Why should they decide where you sit?" Malik straightened his shoulders, and then he dropped into an empty seat halfway back, right in the middle of the rows he wasn't supposed to touch. The bus went silent. Not the usual kind of silence either. Not the everyone's half asleep kind. This was sharp, frozen silence, the kind that feels heavy in the air, the kind that makes your skin prickle. For a moment, Malik stared out the window like nothing was happening. His breath fogged the glass. His fingers tapped against his backpack. On the outside, he looked calm, but inside, his chest felt like it might explode. His stomach twisted so tight it hurt. He could hear the whispers spreading, like a wave rolling down the bus. Did he just? He's not supposed to sit there. What's he doing? Is he crazy? Someone in the back snickered, but it wasn't the friendly kind of laugh. It was sharp, mean, a warning laugh. Malik kept his eyes forward. He wasn't moving. From the driver's mirror, he could feel a pair of eyes on him. The driver had noticed. Of course he had. The man's jaw tightened, but for now, he said nothing. Every second felt like a minute. Every minute felt like an hour. The kid next to him, a skinny boy named Jason, shifted uncomfortably, sliding closer to the window. Jason didn't say a word, but the message was clear. "You're not supposed to be here, and I don't want to get caught in the middle of it." Malik almost smiled, because that was the point. He wasn't supposed to be there. That was exactly why he chose the seat. But he didn't smile. He sat still, gripping his backpack straps like they were lifelines. The ride to school had never felt so long. At every stop, when new kids climbed aboard, the silence hit them too. They glanced around, saw where Malik was sitting, and their eyebrows shot up. Some shook their heads, some smirked, and a few just stared like they were watching something dangerous unfold. By the time the bus finally pulled into the school parking lot, Malik could feel it in the air. He had done it. He had crossed the line. When the doors hissed open, kids rushed out faster than usual, buzzing with the kind of energy that only comes when there's gossip worth spreading. By the time Malik stepped off the bus, the story was already alive, sprinting through the hallways. "Did you hear? Malik sat in the back today." "No way. He really did?" "Yeah, right in the middle. Just sat there like it was nothing. He's asking for trouble. Or maybe he's brave." Malik walked through the crowd, head high, even though his insides still felt like they were shaking. He didn't need to ask what people were saying. He could hear it in the whispers that followed him like shadows. Some voices carried admiration, others dripped with anger. But one thing was clear: Malik had taken one step too far, and nothing was ever going to be the same again. The next morning, the bus felt different before Malik even stepped onto it. The air outside was cold, but inside the bus, the atmosphere was heavier, like the walls themselves knew something had shifted. Kids glanced up the moment he appeared at the door. Some tried to hide their curiosity behind fake yawns or bent heads. Others didn't bother hiding it at all. Everyone was waiting to see what he would do. Would he go back to the front rows like nothing ever happened? Would he pretend yesterday never existed? Or would he try it again? Malik could feel their stares crawling over him, but he didn't slow down. He climbed the steps one at a time, nodded once at the driver, and walked forward. One step, two steps, three. He passed the first row, then the second, then the third. Whispers rose, soft and sharp, like snakes hissing through the air. He's doing it again. No way. Is he crazy? Malik didn't look at them. He didn't answer. He just kept walking until he reached the middle rows. Then, just like yesterday, he slid into a seat. His backpack dropped onto the floor with a dull thud. Silence. And then, stop right there. The voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence like a knife. Malik's head turned slowly. The driver's eyes were locked on him in the big rectangular mirror above the windshield. The man's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned pale. Move back where you belong, the driver said. The words hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. The kids gasped. Some sucked in sharp breaths. Some laughed nervously. Others leaned forward, wide-eyed, hungry for the drama. Malik's stomach clenched, but he didn't move. His pulse pounded in his ears, louder than the bus engine. Did you hear me? The driver barked, louder this time. I said move back. Malik's lips pressed together. His grandmother's voice echoed in his head again, strong and unshakable. You belong anywhere your feet can carry you. So he shook his head, slowly, firmly. I'm fine here, Malik said. His voice was quiet but steady. The bus exploded. Gasps, whispers, laughter. Someone in the back muttered, oh man, he's dead. Another whispered, he's brave. The driver's jaw tightened. His face reddened, and a vein in his temple began to pulse. For a long second, Malik thought the man might actually slam the brakes and throw him off right there. But the driver didn't. Instead, he let out a sharp breath through his nose, muttered something under it, and snapped his eyes back to the road. The bus jerked forward, but the silence didn't break. It only grew heavier. Every bump in the road rattled Malik's bones. Every glance from the kids around him felt like a spotlight. Jason, the boy sitting near him, shifted even farther toward the window, his eyes glued outside as if pretending not to notice. Malik stared ahead. He tried not to fidget, tried not to let his hands shake, but inside, his heart was pounding so hard it hurt. Still, he stayed put. For the rest of that ride, the air was thick with tension. Kids whispered behind their hands, shooting looks at Malik, at the driver, at each other. Nobody laughed like they usually did. Nobody blasted music. Nobody threw chips or cracked jokes. The bus wasn't just a bus anymore. It was a battlefield. When they finally pulled into school, the driver slammed the brakes harder than usual. The doors hissed open, and the kids rushed out as if escaping a storm. By the time Malik stepped onto the pavement, the story was already racing through the hallways faster than yesterday. He said no to the driver. He actually refused. The driver told him to move back, and he didn't. This is gonna blow up. Some kids looked at Malik with awe, like he was a hero. Others glared, like he was reckless. But everyone was talking about him. Malik didn't say a word. He just adjusted his backpack straps and kept walking, his face calm, his heart still pounding. Because deep down, he knew something important. Yesterday, he had broken the unspoken rule. Today, he had defied it out loud. And tomorrow might be the day everything explodes. By the time the first bell rang, Malik's name was everywhere. It spread faster than any rumor about test answers, faster than gossip about who was dating who, even faster than the news of a food fight in the cafeteria last semester. The story traveled like wildfire. He told the bus driver no. He refused to move. He just sat there like he owned it. They say the driver turned red like a tomato. Every hallway echoed with pieces of it. Some kids whispered it like it was a ghost story. Others said it out loud, laughing, shaking their heads. And Malik, he felt it the second he walked through the front doors. Heads turned, eyes followed him. Some kids stepped aside as he passed, as if he was carrying something dangerous. Others gave him nods, small smiles, little signs of respect. But there were also the stares, cold, sharp, disapproving. The kind that told him he had crossed a line he wasn't supposed to. By his locker, a boy from the football team slapped him on the shoulder. Yo, Malik, you're wild, man. Respect. 2 lockers down, a girl muttered under her breath, just loud enough for her friend to hear. He's just looking for trouble. Malik pretended not to notice, but his stomach twisted. It was strange, being caught between hero and villain. In homeroom, the whispers didn't stop. He sat in his usual seat, eyes on his notebook, but the desk behind him buzzed with voices. Would you have done it? One kid asked. No way. My mom would kill me if the school called. Still, it's kinda cool. The teacher walked in, but even she couldn't silence the energy in the room. She gave Malik a look, half curious, half warning, but said nothing. Adults always said nothing. By lunchtime, the buzz had reached its peak. The cafeteria was a storm of noise, and Malik was right in the eye of it. The moment he stepped in, the talking dipped for a second. Not silence, just a pause. Enough for him to notice. Enough for him to know every table was aware of who he was today. He grabbed his tray and walked toward a table near the middle, his usual spot. But this time, when he sat down, it felt different. 2 boys leaned in across from him. Yo, Malik, you really told the driver no? One asked, eyes wide. Yeah, man, I heard he almost kicked you off. The other added. Malik shrugged. I just didn't move. That's all. That's not all. One of them said. Nobody ever does that. You're a legend. But not everyone agreed. From a nearby table, a voice called out, louder than it needed to be. Legend? Please. He's just begging for detention. A few kids laughed. Others turned to see how Malik would react. He didn't. He just kept eating. But inside, he felt the weight of it. Half the cafeteria seemed ready to cheer him on. The other half seemed ready to tear him down. At the far end of the room, Malik caught sight of a group of kids whispering and pointing. One of them, a boy from the back of the bus, met his eyes for a second. His stare was sharp, almost daring. Malik looked away. The truth was simple. The bus rule wasn't just a bus rule anymore. It was a school-wide debate. By the last period of the day, even the teachers had heard. They didn't mention it directly, but Malik could feel it in the way they looked at him. Longer than usual, curious, cautious. And when the final bell rang, releasing everyone into the afternoon, the buzz only grew louder. See you tomorrow, rebel, one kid said as he passed. You better watch yourself, man, another warned, shaking his head. As Malik walked toward the bus lot, he felt the tension in the air. Students clustered in groups, whispering, pointing, waiting. Some wanted to see if he would do it again. Others wanted to see if the driver would snap. And Malik, he kept his face calm, his stride steady, but his heart was racing. Because he understood something now, something he hadn't fully realized before. This wasn't just about a seat anymore. It was about what that seat meant. And somehow, in just 2 days, he had become the center of it all. The story of Malik's seat choice didn't stay on the bus. It never could. By the time Friday evening rolled around, it had traveled farther than anyone expected. Out of the school hallways, across backyards, into kitchens and living rooms, and finally to the dinner tables where parents had the final word. And at those dinner tables, the real arguments began. At Malik's house, the smell of fried chicken filled the air. His little sister set the table while their grandmother hummed softly, her hands moving with the memory of 1,000 dinners before. Malik sat quietly, staring at his plate, waiting for the moment he knew was coming. His mother placed a bowl of green beans down with a sharp clink. Malik, she said, not even even looking at him yet. I need to hear it from you. Did you really tell the bus driver no? Malik shifted in his chair. Yeah, he admitted. His voice was steady, though his chest felt tight. He told me to move up front. I didn't. His little sister gasped, eyes shining with excitement. Like Rosa Parks, she whispered, grinning like she had discovered a secret. Their grandmother's head lifted, and for the first time that evening, a smile touched her lips. Out of the mouths of babes, she said softly, yes, like Rosa Parks. But their mother wasn't smiling. She pressed her palm to her forehead. Baby, don't say that, she told her daughter. This isn't history class. This is our life, and Malik is just a boy. She turned her eyes to him at last, sharp and worried. You could get in real trouble for this. Malik looked down at his plate. It was just a seat, he said. No, his grandmother interrupted firmly, her voice carrying the weight of years. It was not just a seat. It was a stand, and it was long overdue. His mother frowned, her lips pressed into a thin line. Mama, please, you know how people in this town are. They don't like waves. They don't like change. And if they feel threatened, they'll push back harder. They'll push back at him. The grandmother leaned forward, her eyes flashing. And if no one pushes back, nothing changes. Do you want your son to learn to bow his head forever? Or do you want him to learn to stand tall? The table went silent except for the faint clatter of forks. Malik sat caught in the middle, his mother's fear pulling him one way, his grandmother's pride pulling him another. Across town, at the Johnsons' house, the mood was completely different. Their son Daniel had just finished telling the story, his voice high with drama. Dad, you should have seen it. The driver told him to move. He didn't, just sat there with this look on his face, like he owned the place. Mr. Johnson leaned back in his chair, a smirk tugging at his lips. And now everyone thinks he's some kind of hero, huh? Yeah, Daniel said, rolling his eyes. Kids were talking about it all day. Hero? Mr. Johnson barked a laugh, stabbing his steak with his fork. Sounds like he's just begging for trouble. That bus has worked the same way for years. Everybody knows where they sit. Nobody complains. So why now? Why stir it up? Mrs. Johnson shifted in her chair, frowning slightly. But don't you think it's strange? She asked carefully. If kids really are divided like that, if the driver actually told him to move back, strange? No. Mr. Johnson cut her off. That's called order. It keeps the peace. Life is full of rules you don't like. You don't go breaking them just because you feel like it. Their daughter, Emily, had been quiet up until then. She set her fork down softly. But maybe he wasn't just breaking a rule, she said. Maybe he was standing up for himself. Her father's head snapped toward her. Standing up? Don't be fooled. Standing up is serving your country. Standing up is paying your bills and working hard. Sitting in the wrong bus seat? That's not standing up. That's picking a fight. Emily dropped her gaze to her plate, cheeks burning. The silence that followed was louder than any argument. And it wasn't just the Johnsons. At the Martinez house, Mr. Martinez pointed his fork across the table. I'm telling you, that boy is brave. Somebody finally did it. About time. Mrs. Martinez shook her head, worry etched across her face. Brave? Or reckless? You know what happens when kids start drawing attention. They get punished harder. And then who suffers? Their families. Their son Luis looked between them, wide-eyed. So, is he in trouble or not? Both parents answered at once. Yes, from his mother. No, from his father. They glared at each other, the argument sparking all over again. At the Nguyen's house, the debate was just as heated. Mr. Nguyen folded his arms, his voice sharp. Why couldn't he just sit where he was told? There are bigger problems in the world than where you sit on a bus. But his wife shook her head firmly. No, that's exactly how it starts. Little rules that tell you where you belong. Little rules that keep you quiet. If nobody challenges them, they never end. Their daughter Lynn whispered softly, I think he's brave. And her father muttered back, I think he's foolish. Across the entire town, kitchens became battlegrounds. Forks clattered, voices rose, parents clashed. Some called Malik a hero, others called him a troublemaker. And Malik? He sat at his own table, pushing food around his plate, listening to his mother and grandmother fight over what he had done. He didn't feel like a hero. He didn't feel like a troublemaker. He just felt tired. Tired of the rule. Tired of the whispers. Tired of being told where he could and couldn't belong. But one thing was clear. The bus wasn't just a bus anymore. It had become the battlefield. And now, every parent in town had chosen a side. By Monday morning, the whispers had grown too loud to ignore. The story of Malik's stand had spilled from the bus to the school to living rooms, and from living rooms into the community itself. By Tuesday afternoon, the school board had no choice. They announced an emergency meeting at the town hall. Everyone was invited. Everyone planned to come. The town hall was usually quiet, a place where people filed papers, argued about zoning, or voted on boring things like budgets. But that night, it was transformed. Cars crowded the parking lot, headlights beaming in every direction. Parents streamed in through the glass doors, pulling their kids along. Teachers came in groups, some whispering nervously, others standing tall with folded arms. Even people with no children at the school showed up, eager to witness the drama everyone had been talking about. Inside, the room buzzed like a hive. Folding chairs scraped against the floor. Voices clashed in sharp bursts. Have you heard what that boy did? He's just a kid, but he shook the whole school. He should have been punished already. No, he should be thanked. The air was heavy, like a thunderstorm was about to break. Malik sat near the front with his mother and grandmother on either side of him. His little sister clung to his arm, eyes wide, her excitement barely contained. Look at all these people, she whispered. They're here because of you. Malik's stomach flipped. He didn't want to be a spectacle. But here he was, 12 years old, at the center of a town divided. His mother squeezed his hand tightly. Stay quiet, she murmured. Don't say a word unless they ask you to. His grandmother, on the other side, leaned close and whispered, if they ask, you speak your truth. Don't let them scare you. Two voices, two different pieces of advice. Malik swallowed hard. At the front of the room, the school board members sat behind a long table, papers and microphones in front of them. The superintendent, a man with gray hair and a stiff tie, cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming, he began. We are here to discuss a situation that has escalated over the past week regarding transportation conduct. We ask for respectful dialogue tonight. Respectful dialogue. Malik almost laughed. The room was already buzzing too loud for respect. The first parent to stand was Mr. Johnson. His voice boomed across the room. This is nonsense, he said. A boy sat in the wrong place on a bus, and suddenly the whole town loses its mind. Rules are rules. He should have followed them. End of story. My son has been riding that bus for years without issue. Now this boy comes along and decides he's above it all. Half the room clapped. The other half booed. Malik shrank in his seat. His mother's hand tightened around his. Then Mrs. Martinez stood. Her voice trembled at first, but grew stronger with each word. My son told me about the bus rule. He said he always felt it, but he never dared to say anything. If Malik had the courage to break that silence, then we should be thanking him, not punishing him. The crowd erupted again, louder this time. Applause thundered from one side, while shouts of, sit down, came from the other. The superintendent banged his gavel. Order, please, order. But there was no order. One by one, more voices rose. Teachers spoke of what they had seen, some admitting they had noticed the strange pattern of seating but never questioned it. A history teacher said, we teach our students about equality and justice, but if they can't even sit where they want on a school bus, what are we really teaching them? A math teacher muttered, kids just need discipline. This is overblown. Students spoke too. A girl from the front rows stood up and said, I've always sat near the driver because that's where we were expected to. But it never felt fair. Then Jason, the boy who had sat next to Malik when it all began, stood slowly. His voice was small but clear. I was scared. I didn't say anything when Malik sat next to me. But the truth is, I thought he was brave. Malik's chest tightened. For the first time, he didn't feel so alone. The tension grew hotter with each speaker. Voices clashed like lightning. Every sentence sparked another reaction. Tradition should be respected. Tradition isn't an excuse for segregation. He's just a child. Sometimes children see the truth clearer than adults. The superintendent kept banging his gavel, his voice straining. Order. We need order. But the crowd roared louder, rising and falling like waves. Malik sat frozen, heart pounding. He didn't want to look at anyone, but he couldn't stop hearing them. Every argument, every clap, every shout, it all swirled around him. And then, suddenly, the superintendent's voice cut through. Perhaps, he said slowly, we should hear from the boy himself. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to Malik. His mother's hand gripped him tight. You don't have to, she whispered. His grandmother leaned in. Yes, you do, she whispered back. Malik's throat felt dry. His legs trembled as he stood, but somehow, he found his way to the front. The microphone looked huge, alien, waiting. His reflection stared back at him in the glass of the board's table. A boy, just a boy. He took a shaky breath. I just wanted to sit where I chose, he said softly. His voice echoed in the hushed room. That's all. It wasn't about trouble. It wasn't about rules. It was about me feeling like I belonged anywhere, just like everyone else. Silence. A silence deeper than any before. He looked down, then lifted his chin again. If that makes me wrong, then maybe the rule is what's wrong, not me. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some faces glowed with pride, others burned with anger, but no one could deny the weight of his words. The superintendent shifted uncomfortably in his seat. For once, even he had no quick answer. The meeting broke into chaos again. Cheers, shouts, arguments, applause. But Malik barely heard it. He walked back to his seat, his grandmother's proud smile steadying him, his mother's worried eyes watching every step. The showdown wasn't over, but Malik had spoken, and nothing could take that back. The days after the town hall meeting felt heavy, like the whole school was holding its breath. No official decision had been announced yet. The school board promised they were reviewing the situation, but kids didn't care about reviews. They cared about what would happen the next morning when the bus pulled up. Whispers filled the hallways. Will Malik do it again? Will the driver stop him? Will the board punish him? Even the teachers seemed tense. They glanced at Malik in class, then quickly looked away, as if his presence reminded them of something they didn't want to face. Malik felt the weight everywhere he went. Every step through the hallways carried dozens of eyes on him. Every slam of a locker echoed with unspoken questions. He didn't want to be the center of attention, but he couldn't back down now. Not after everything. That morning, the bus rolled up to his street like it always did. Yellow paint chipped, brakes squealing, doors hissing open. Malik climbed the steps, his backpack heavy on his shoulders. The driver's eyes flicked to him in the mirror. The man's jaw was tight, his hands white-knuckled on the wheel, but he didn't speak. Not yet. The bus was quieter than usual. Kids held their breath as Malik walked past the first row, then the second, then the third. Every step felt louder than the engine. He reached the middle rows, the same spot where he had sat before. His heart hammered. He lowered himself into the seat. This time, no one laughed, no one whispered. They just watched. The driver's eyes stayed on him in the mirror, but his mouth stayed shut. The silence stretched on. Then, slowly, a sound broke it. A girl from the front rows, one of the kids who had always sat near the driver, stood up. Her hands trembled, but her chin was high. She walked down the aisle and slid into the seat across from Malik. Gasps rippled through the bus. Then Jason, the boy who had once shifted away from Malik, took a deep breath. He stood, grabbed his backpack, and moved a few rows back, sitting beside Malik instead of hiding at the edge. The silence cracked wider. One by one, kids began to move. Some shuffled forward, some slid backward, some traded places with their friends. For the first time, the bus didn't look divided by invisible lines. It looked free. The driver's knuckles loosened on the wheel. His lips pressed into a thin line, but he didn't say a word. He started the engine, and the bus rumbled forward. This time, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt alive. By lunchtime, the story had spread through the entire school again, but this time, it was different. They moved. Kids sat wherever they wanted. The driver didn't stop them. The cafeteria buzzed with excitement. Some kids grinned and high-fived Malik as he passed. Others still muttered that it was asking for trouble. But the energy was different now. The rule, the one nobody ever talked about, the one that had kept kids in their places for years, was broken, and it hadn't snapped back into place. That week, the school board finally issued a statement. All students, it read, are free to sit wherever they choose on school buses. Discrimination, spoken or unspoken, has no place in our community. The words were printed in the local paper, read aloud on the morning announcements, and pinned to every bulletin board in the school. But for Malik, the real victory wasn't in the official statement. It was in the morning ride when kids laughed together across rows, when no one flinched as he walked past, when the driver kept his eyes on the road instead of the mirror. It was in the simple act of sitting where he wanted, without fear. That Friday, as the final bell rang and kids spilled into the buses for the ride home, Malik paused at the door of his bus. He looked down the aisle. For the first time, it didn't feel divided. He could sit anywhere, so he did. He walked calmly, slowly, and chose a seat near the middle. A group of kids waved him over, and he slid in with them. This time, there was no silence. There was music playing from the back. There was chatter from the front. The bus sounded alive in a way it never had before. As the engine roared and the bus rolled forward, Malik leaned against the window, his reflection staring back at him. It hit him then. It had never really been about the seat. It had been about his voice. The rule was gone because he had spoken without words, by refusing to move, by refusing to bow his head, by showing everyone that silence could be broken. And once silence is broken, it can't be put back together the same way. Malik smiled faintly, watching the town blur past outside. The ride felt lighter, freer, like the bus was carrying more than just students. It was carrying change, a freedom ride in its own small way.